August 29, 2005, America's country land known as the South was hit by one of the costliest and deadliest hurricanes ever known to the U.S., Hurricane Katrina. While we may know about how this affected New Orleans, most of us have never heard of a city that was severely affected, Biloxi, Mississippi. In 2001, I was stationed at Biloxi, Mississippi for military school. I was in my first year as a Marine, and I was still absorbing life away from home. I loved Biloxi. It's a beachfront town located right on the Gulf, and it is beautiful. Casinos, which I wasn't old enough to enter, floated on the water. I heard that Mississippi had laws that they couldn't be on land. There were dozens of shops on the beachfront and tons of sights to see. There were also historical homes scattered throughout the town. When I went there in 2010, I expected it to be the same. Boy, was I in for a surprise. I didn't hear about Katrina really affecting or doing anything in Biloxi, so I assumed it was the same. When I got there, however, nothing was the same as I had remembered. All of the beachfront properties were gone. I went to tour some historical homes to find out they no longer existed. The casinos that I had been dying to enter were no longer on the water. Instead, they were smaller and on the land. What had happened to Biloxi? While New Orleans was getting flooded, Biloxi was being wiped away like crumbs on a table. 6,000 businesses and homes were destroyed completely by a 27-foot storm surge. 90% of the beachfront properties had been destroyed by this hurricane. The hurricane winds whipped around this town for 17 hours. One of the most shocking parts of the story are the casinos. The casinos were on barges, and they floated. This hurricane storm ripped these leviathans of buildings off of their supports and pushed them inland. Treasure Bay, a casino that looks like a pirate ship, was hollowed out, never to be built again. President Casino Biloxi was found 1 mile from its original location on top of a Holiday Inn. Tivoli Hotel, a historical hotel from the 1920s, was crushed by a floating casino. Another floating casino ended up on top of a historical home, leveling it completely. I usually don't feel bad for casinos, but the Hard Rock was going to have its initial grand opening on the 1st of September, 2 days after the hurricane happened. Because of the damage they endured, they didn't end up opening for another 2 years, in July of 2007. It must have been so hard for the people living there. I can't even imagine. Jobs were lost, homes were destroyed. Where do you go from there? One of the saddest things for me was seeing the stairways to nowhere. You would see these empty lots of property next to the beach. There would be nothing there except for a couple of concrete steps and an empty driveway. Someone had made a life there. Someone had raised a family there. Where were they now? The community of Biloxi seems smaller than it did during my stay in 2001, but the people who remained were people full of hope. One example of this is the trees. During the hurricane, massive winds ripped branches off of several oak trees, practically destroying them. There was an artist from Florida who wanted to contribute to this town. He donated his time, refusing any money, to build these symbols of death into beautiful statues of life. He carved 15 plus trees into symbols of creatures that share the habitat with the people of Biloxi: dolphins, birds, and eagles. As you drive down the beachfront strip, you can see these wonderful pieces of hope. Another example of the hope that remains in Biloxi is the resurrection of a historical home called the Jefferson Davis Bivouac. This is one of the oldest and most famous historical homes in Mississippi. It dates back to 1852. And it's known for a lot of things, but what it's really famous for is being a Confederate veteran home for veterans of the Civil War. People from within the community and further reaching donated money to restore this to its original state. They had experts come in and make it exactly the way it was back in the 1800s. You can now tour this home and get a little insight of the history of the South. If you ever get a chance to visit the South, I recommend you go to New Orleans. It's a great town and it's survived so much. While you're down there, however, you can take a quick hour-and-a-half drive over to its neighbor, Biloxi, Mississippi. There you will see a city that has survived so much and still remains. And you can drive on the Strip and see the trees of hope. And while you're there, take a tour of the historical hotel. Hurricane Katrina was a violent wrath of nature, but this city stays and will always stay. Thank you.